meaning that when you're in a state of coherence, your heart and brain create a harmonic ratio within that field that's generated that allows you to access non-local memory and awareness. Because your heart and brain are not separate systems. They actually form a coupled oscillator to drive that toroidal field, to link you into the greater toroidal field. And when they are in coherence, you enter into a phase-locked loop between your inner field and your outer field, your toroidal field within the greater toroidal field. And within your field, you create a harmonic ratio that is in resonance with the outer toroidal field that can act like an antenna, allowing you to access these non-local fields, information that isn't stored in your personal memory. And in this process, you're not just connecting, you're remembering your true nature as a waveform within a larger field. Like Nikola Tesla said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Welcome to the Boundless Journey, a place to explore life's mysteries and the depths of the human experience, so we can embody more authentic aspects of our truth, show up as better stewards for this earth, and facilitate this collective transformation that begins within each and every one of us. This podcast is a sacred space for your soul's remembrance, for those who don't quite fit into the old world, because you're here to help build the new. Let's keep it dialed and wild as we explore our infinite potentials together, one rooted step at a time. My name is Rob Villa, and I thank you for joining along to play your essential part in this most epic, boundless journey. Hello, loves. Welcome back to the Boundless Journey, a space to remember, reawaken, and realign to your soul's inner knowing. Let's take a moment to drop in. Which is especially important today because we are talking about the magic of coherence. So please join me as we set the frequency for this space. Pray that any beings present in this transmission today be under divine protection for their highest good. May any benevolent beings who wish to come forward for the refinement of this transmission, please do so. And may everyone present here receive exactly what they're meant to receive for their absolute highest good, within the highest good of all that is. And so it is. Have you ever noticed that sometimes life just seems to be out of sync? Nothing's in flow, nothing seems to be working. There's just so much resistance and stagnation. And other times it just seems like universe is this beautiful, graceful dance of perfection, of everything being in time and order. You're just in flow with the river of life and everything is unfolding beautifully with ease. And then miracles and synchronicities just spontaneously appear. And it makes you kind of just revel in the awe and wonder and magic of life. What if those moments aren't just random? These moments of flow and magic. What if there's a single overlooked key that unlocks this natural state of alignment within you? not just with yourself, but with the greater being that we are, with the earth, and with the cosmos, with the all that is. And what if, by reclaiming your own coherence, you're not just healing yourself, but you're actively contributing to the healing, upliftment, and stabilization of the Earth's planetary field? In today's episode, we're diving deep into that key. We'll explore how to navigate between chaos and coherence, and how to reclaim your inner rhythm, stabilize your field, and align with the harmonic heartbeat of life. Not just for your own gain, but for the benefit of all. If you're ready to stop fighting against the current and start flowing with life's grace and wisdom, I invite you to stay with us as we journey back to your natural state of coherence. So, the universe is at the same time both chaotic and coherent. And depending on whatever station you set your dial of perception to, whichever one you're aligned to, will determine which part of that spectrum you'll experience. We've all at some point in our lives experienced these different spectrums, sometimes being in chaos and that stagnation, sometimes being in this coherent flow. But what if we weren't subjected to the whims of life? That we actually had a say in which part of that spectrum we can live our daily lives in. Not only do we have the power to align with and live in coherence, but I believe it's part of our destiny in our eternal quest towards mastery, to understand our true nature and our natural state of alignment, and all the amazing things that can bring into our lives. So, what exactly is coherence? Coherence is essentially a state of alignment through resonance. It's when all parts of a system, your body, your mind, your energy, all move together in a unified rhythm. Think of it like an elaborate orchestra. You have the strings, the horns, the percussion section, all in tune, all playing in the same key, all playing in the same tempo. And you have these essentially small fields of coherence, like the string sections, for example, interacting and vibrating on a similar frequency as these other fields of coherence within the orchestra, like the horns, to essentially all resonate with one another to create a greater field of overall coherence. That when you zoom out, you don't just see the strings or see or hear the percussion or the drums. You see it as one functioning orchestra, something way greater than just the sum of its parts, but a whole new thing. This is essentially how all of life functions, like that orchestra. Life is one song, a universe, made up of all of these different smaller fields of coherence which are resonating together to make one great field of coherence. From the micro to the macro, waves and particles all vibrating in resonance to organize itself into these scalar, fractal functioning systems, repeatedly to infinity and beyond, and always in all directions. But it's not random. It's not just happenstance. It's a mysterious, ineffable, intelligent divine force of creation driving this organization and stabilizing these systems into coherent structures, into coherent relationship with one another. The Nobel Prize winner for physics in 2020, Roger Penrose, states that if the universe had started in a completely random state, the chance of it beginning in this very low entropy, highly ordered condition needed for galaxies, stars, and life to form would be 1 in 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 123. This number is so unimaginably small that even writing out the number of zeros within that exponent would exceed the number of particles in the observable universe. And on that same note, Paul Davies, PhD, professor of mathematical physics and author of Evidence of Purpose, Scientists Discover the Creator, he talks about the deep level of order found within every level of creation. In his book, he states that if there were no inherent guiding intelligence and cosmic evolution were governed only by the chance operations of mechanical laws, the time required to achieve the level of order we now see in the universe purely by random processes is of the order of at least 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 80 years, which is a number so inconceivably longer than that of the current age of the universe. Systems theorist Ervin Laszlo, when citing this calculation, said, "Serendipity of this magnitude strains credibility. Must we then face the possibility that the universe we witness is the result of a purposeful design by an omnipotent master builder?" Why am I saying all this? It is relevant. The reason I'm saying this is to bring into context that when we are aligning with coherence, this universal divine intelligence embedded within all life, we are aligning with something that is so exponentially magnificent. And to let go of this notion that it is something that our 3D dualistic brains will ever comprehend logically. And if we are to ever understand this aspect of coherence that we are seeking to work with, it will have to be through other methods beyond just our logical thinking. We won't be able to access coherence through the material plane alone, even though this material plane is our launching pad from where we can then access the higher planes of existence, intelligence, and coherence that we can then anchor back into this material plane, i.e., bringing heaven on earth. Though essentially, when we're stepping into coherence, it's important to remember that we are tapping into something that is beyond the physical. So let's recap real quick. The universe is inherently coherent oneness. It is divine perfection. From the perfect springs the perfect, take the perfect from the perfect, and only the perfect remains. However, we experience it as a spectrum from chaos to coherence, depending on which aspect of the creation we're aligned with. So, first and foremost, in order to align with the all and tap into this boundless divine life force of creation, we have to first align with that very same force, which not only is within us, but is us. So let's zoom back into 3D real quick and ask, what does this actually look like, this state of coherence? Well, studies from the HeartMath Institute show that coherence is when our heart and brains are in sync, and that then creates this powerful electromagnetic field. This field essentially leads to optimal functioning. It leads to a balanced, regulated nervous system, more peace, clearer thinking, and better health. You feel centered, calm, present, and you feel a stronger sense of purpose as you're now tapping into something greater than yourself. An example of this coherence that we can all relate with are with crystals, for example. Crystals are not just rocks, they are the mineral kingdom within an exceptional level of coherence. If you were to zoom in on the atomic structure of this crystal, you would see that it is a beautiful pattern, which essentially, when scaling out, creates this hexagonal shape. And you notice, because of this coherence, crystals are clear. Clarity is birthed from coherence. So when we are in coherence, we are like that crystal. we are crystal clear. So when you are aligning with this inner state of coherence, you're essentially aligning with the natural force of life in its more resonant form. And when your inner system is aligned, you begin to resonate with the oneness that connects everything. And when your inner and outer worlds are one, something happens where you experience this phase lock of your exact place within the tapestry of life, where all parts are exactly in order and where they need to be, including yourself exactly where you sit or stand on the earth as we're spinning around the sun in the Milky Way. When we're in coherence, this becomes more than just a concept, but a felt reality. This is partly what is referred to as unity consciousness, Christ consciousness, or the Akashic field. It's the magnetic field, for the lack of a better word, because it's way more than just magnetism, but it's the magnetic field that links all particles, all thoughts, all beings, and all things within creation. When we are out of alignment with that inner coherence, we perceive that orchestra of life not as a beautiful resonance of separate parts creating this unified song, but as dissonance, as entropy. All the instruments are playing their own tune. They're all in different keys, playing at different tempos. Nothing's in flow, nothing's working together. Instead of everything functioning as one coherent field, everything is functioning in separation, forgetting their connection to the whole. How it is one song, it's one orchestra. This is what creates that experience of chaos and dissonance. Another way to say this is that within coherence, you're in unity consciousness. And within chaos, you're in separation consciousness. Within coherence, you're going with the river of life. And in chaos, it's like you're swimming upstream without a paddle. So in coherence, there's flow. And in chaos, a lot of times you experience this resistance and stagnation. You can start to see how being in coherence can be so supportive in so many ways. In traditional Chinese medicine, I'm a licensed acupuncturist if you didn't catch the first episode. In TCM, everything is based on this concept of flow and resonance. That's why my practice name is Root Resonance. Each organ system is a separate instrument within the orchestra of your body. The liver plays a tune, the spleen plays a tune, the lungs play a tune, the lual connection between the lungs and the large intestine play a similar tune, the spleen and the stomach, which are in a lual connection, play a similar tune, and they all have these specific correlations and interdependencies with the other organ systems, with the other instruments in the body, all to function in this perfect interconnected system. And so when everything is playing in rhythm and in sync, your body's energy, your chi, is flowing at ease. And that is essentially the goal to accomplish. That's why in China, Qigong and Tai Chi are so prevalent, because it allows your energy to flow at ease. But in life, life isn't always easy. And so something can come along that disrupts that ease, whether it be a physical, emotional, or mental trauma. And that then affects your body's ability to have your chi flow at ease. Your chi is flowing then at dis-ease. And that is when disease begins to manifest. When you're in a state of inner coherence, when everything is functioning as one, and you're therefore able to tap into the greater oneness, you are essentially tapping in to that self-organizing force of the universe that we talked about earlier, that organizes particles into systems. And so you're tapping into this self-organizing force within you. And that brings everything into harmony, homeostasis, balance, and order. Have you ever been in Shavasana after a yoga class? This is a perfect example of this. You've moved all this stagnation in your body, your chi is flowing at ease, and then you let it all sink and rest, and you find this inner state of peace and coherence and wholeness. And you can feel just your body and your mind and your spirit all aligning. You can feel parts of yourself reorganizing and reshifting to bring you into center. And then you enter into this dream world where insights and revelations and maybe your sankalpa from that class just starts coming to you. And then, like, before you know it, the teacher is like, okay, now roll to your right side. And you're like, no, I was just dropping in. I was just meeting God. I was just in the centered, non-local awareness of peace and presence. I guess I have to go back into life. That is a perfect example of coherence. Some of the bliss of coherence that you can experience. When you are tapped into that field, you've also just created a bridge to access the infinite field of the cosmos. With this, you've created an avenue for insights and wisdom to be received by you, like in that Shavasana experience. I'll try and explain this in another way so it's not just hearsay or take my word for it. So we spoke of earlier how the HeartMath Institute has found that when our hearts and brains are in coherence, we create this powerful electromagnetic field. Well, in the Codex Universalis Principia Mathematica, authored by Sir Robert Edward Grant, which proposes a new harmonic architecture of the universe, it states that this resonance is a mathematical mirror field, meaning that when you're in a state of coherence, your heart and brain create a harmonic ratio within that field that's generated that allows you to access non-local memory and awareness. Because your heart and brain are not separate systems. They actually form a coupled oscillator to drive that toroidal field, to link you into the greater toroidal field. And when they are in coherence, you enter into a phase-locked loop between your inner field and your outer field, your toroidal field within the greater toroidal field. And within your field, you create a harmonic ratio that is in resonance with the outer toroidal field that can act like an antenna, allowing you to access these non-local fields, information that isn't stored in your personal memory. And in this process, you're not just connecting, you're remembering your true nature as a waveform within a larger field. Like Nikola Tesla said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So, in establishing this harmonic ratio through your heart-brain coherence, your energy field is literally becoming a geometric structure that is in resonance with the non-local field of intelligence, where everything that has ever happened, thought, or been remembered is stored in resonant patterns within the field. Another way to explain this is all energy is a waveform. I like to see it as energy creates shapes. Have you ever seen Cymatics when they have a table of salt or water and they put a vibration into it and it creates a geometric shape? That's always happening. And the shapes that are created in coherence, they resonate with the other geometric shapes within the greater fields. Think of it simply as the waveform of a specific radio signal. The way that radio works, we dial that to 106.5, which is a specific shape of a frequency, which syncs up with that shape of the frequency, which is everywhere in the air. And because of that, it makes that connection. And then you are then tuned in that radio station. You can listen to that station. And this is what's happening with the harmonic ratio that we create in our field with that coherence. We're able to tap in to this non-local field of awareness that's always there. This is how I feel past life regression works. You get put into this hypnotic state, into this deep level of coherence, which you're then able to express a specific geometrical harmonic ratio in your field, which is in resonance with the non-local field of the Akashic awareness. So then the hypnotist, the past life regression therapist, can probe you by asking questions to direct you to specific areas within the Akashic field that you can then take information and bring it back into this present day awareness. You're able to access these areas, these different timelines, your past life or your future life. So, all in all, when you reach coherence, your field is compatible with that greater Akashic field. And you're in turn able to access information directly from that field. And this could be in the form of spiritual wisdom or insights. This could be what we describe as psychic knowing or intuition or any of these psychic gifts, or memories or of past or future timelines like in past life regression, or other symbolism that's relevant for you and your path. When you're stepping into coherence, you're literally giving yourself the opportunity to receive downloads and upgrades from the universe. So, aside from having access to the greater field of unity consciousness, when you're tapped into this internal heart-brain coherence, into this divine state of connection, it creates the environment for healing to happen spontaneously, like how I was describing earlier with that Shavasana example. Entering into coherence is entering into the field of self-organizing intelligence, where the blueprints for creation are held and can be accessed. If you're a healer, which I'm sure if you're listening to this, you are in some way or another, entering into and maintaining that state of coherence is especially important. In the thousands of acupuncture treatments I've given, I've noticed how my internal state affected the outcome of the treatment. And I'm sure if you're a practitioner, you've experienced this as well. I've also been really cognizant of this when receiving treatments. That's why I never want to go to a massage therapist or acupuncturist or energy worker that's incoherent, that's scattered or ungrounded. I want to go to one that is coherent and connected. You can feel the difference. The level of healing that comes through when a practitioner is in a field of coherence is exponentially greater than someone who's disconnected and just going through the motions. If you're a practitioner of any kind, I really encourage you to think about this the next time you put your hands on a client or patient and see how entering into a state of coherence affects the outcome of that session. In most of my treatments that I would give, I'd usually incorporate craniosacral therapy into the session. While the patient is lying there with the needles in, I would, depending on what they need, do some craniosacral holds on their body. And I noticed when I was holding their cranial base, what I found was that if my intention tapped into that internal coherence within that I've been talking about here, I could drop them instantly into a still point. A place where there is no longer space or time, just one coherent center. And this is where the majority of the healings would really take place on my table, within that state of coherence. That practice that I had with giving up to 1,000 or so craniosacral treatments and intentionally dropping into a state of coherence at a drop of a dime, numerous times a day, really taught me that I could do this at any point in any time. Granted, years of meditation has helped me to do this, but now when I meditate or in my daily life, I can instantly shift my brainwaves from a state of beta to theta just by turning my attention inwards and setting that intention to do so. This is really beneficial when dowsing too, which I'll talk about in a later episode. But I'm saying this to tell you that anyone can do this. We can shift into coherence at the drop of a dime just by switching the channel, turning the dial. The simplest way to do this is to just stop, let go of anything you're holding on to, close your eyes, turn your attention inward, and be in that infinite space within and without. I imagine myself just kind of locking into the greater matrix of it all. But even thinking about it, even talking about it, that's not it. You have to experience it for yourself. In a place of coherence, there are no descriptive words. The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao, as it says in the Tao Te Ching. You have to practice and experience it, what it is for yourself. And it helps to have the awareness to know when you've been in coherence and when you've been in chaos, and to understand the difference. So you know when you're in or out of alignment. So I just want to take a moment and ask you, when was there a time in your life when you knew that you were in a state of coherence? It could be a time in nature where you felt free and connected, a meditation session you had where you lost all concept of self and were just breathing non-local awareness. It could have been in a plant medicine ceremony, tangibly feeling that divine oneness with everything. Or it could have been a time when you just experienced synchronicity after synchronicity and you were like, wow, there is something magical happening here. And I have this deep feeling that everything is connected and I feel so supported. Aside from feeling absolutely content, calm, centered, and connected, one of the best external validators that you're in a state of coherence is seeing and feeling synchronicities. It makes sense seeing that coherence is tapping into that state of oneness and interconnectedness, and synchronicities are these little expressions of that unified reality, little winks of that interconnectedness of all things within the quantum unfoldment that would otherwise seem to be disconnected or separate. So pay attention to those synchronicities, and we'll talk a little bit more later about how we can step into coherence. So, aside from all the personal benefits, to really enrich your experience with the interconnectedness of life so you can essentially have a better time in this human experience, why else is it important that we enter into and do our best to stabilize in this field of coherence? Well, I don't think it can be overstated enough that everything is intricately connected. So it would make sense that this state of coherence doesn't just stay confined to your person, but affects everything it's connected to. So while it is personal, it's also planetary. When enough people become coherent, it creates a ripple that stabilizes the entire Earth's field. It's how collective transformation really begins within each and every one of us, not from force, but from resonance. Nature is really just an interactive soup of energy fields. When enough people are in coherence, there's a greater ability to shift the overall vibration of the planet towards collective coherence. But while it is necessary, let's be careful to not get lost in the 3D perception of having to impose our vibration on the outer world. Because in the holographic understanding of the universe, a concept fundamental to Chinese medicine, where the part is in the whole and the whole is in the part, meaning that you literally are the entire earth, the whole universe rests within you. So when you shift, the whole shifts. When your field stabilizes within coherence, you actually strengthen and stabilize the entire grid of the earth. This is how it's always been. We're just now reinstalling this memory. The earth is a living being with electromagnetic fields that responds to the coherence of the fields of its inhabitants, of us humans. Scientists are even building sensors to measure these fields. The project is called the Global Coherence Initiative, and they built a worldwide network of sensitive magnetometers called the Global Coherence Monitoring System. And these sensors track geomagnetic activity, fluctuations in Schumann resonances, and subtle magnetic fluctuations. What they're finding is that large-scale emotional events, whether positive or negative, directly impact the Earth. That there's a feedback loop between the collective consciousness and the geomagnetic field. The main takeaway of this is that we are in profound direct relationship with the Earth, that the fields of both ourselves and the Earth greatly influence one another. It's a two-way breath. As you align, the Earth aligns. And together you create a stronger field for everyone. I also see it as this wonderful generative feedback loop that we go out into nature and entrain to its coherence because nature is usually already in coherence. And then that helps us to bring us into alignment. And then that gained alignment then in turn reinforces the health and stability of the greater earth, of that nature that we just received that coherence from, just generating this loop of coherence between us and the earth. I thought this was going to be a shorter episode, but as I went and started researching and just more and more things started to come through, it just kind of created this wave. So thanks for sticking with me to the end. I just wanted to end this with a few tips on how we can step into coherence. So how do we actually step into coherence? This natural state of our alignment. There are so many ways to do this. We can broaden our focus to the greater field, cultivate more gratitude and empathy, practice mindfulness, integrate our shadow. We can listen to healing meditative music, practice acts of kindness and service to the whole. We can work with the intelligence and coherence of crystals, like I mentioned earlier. There are so many things we can do, but I really want to highlight 3 of them. The first one is breath. Breath anchors you into your body and regulates your nervous system, creating the physiological environment for your heart and brain to be coherent. Your breath stimulates that vagus nerve, which helps in that communication between the heart and the brain. So breath is the number one thing that helps us to really go into coherence. And a lot more can be said on that, obviously, but for now, I just want to say that breath is number 1. The second one is nature. Immersing yourself in the frequency of nature is one of the easiest things to do to enter into a state of coherence. Because when you're out there in the wilderness, everything around you is already coherent. You just have to allow that to take you over, to absorb into that field. Especially if you get your skin, you can touch a tree or put your bare feet on the earth. That will allow you to connect with the Schumann resonance of the earth, 7.83 hertz, the frequency at which the earth breathes. And so if you hold that connection long enough for at least 10 to 15 minutes, you'll begin to entrain to that vibration, harmonize with that frequency of the Schumann resonance, which will allow you to be in coherence with the earth. And of course, if you're in coherence with the earth, in order to do that, you have to be in coherence with yourself. So, in being in coherence with the earth will help you to be in coherence with yourself and all that is. And the third, and what I personally think is the most important thing to activate this field of coherence, is meditation. This really can't be understated. I'll do a whole episode on this later because there's so much to talk about. But essentially, if you're in meditation, you're likely already in coherence. That stillness that occurs when you're meditating creates the best suitable environment for coherence to manifest. One of the best things you can do for yourself, the people around you, and the planet as a whole is to have a consistent meditation practice. I'm really excited to talk about that later because it's something that's so simple, yet will make the most profound change in your life. If you're resonating with this and you'd like a daily opportunity and reminder to drop into coherence with others, my friend Rose just released this app website called the Global Gridworkers Collective, where every day at 11:11, you join others from around the world in anchoring loving coherence into the earth. I have my alarm set to 11:11, and I've found that it's a nice reminder to pause, come back to presence, enter into coherence, connect with the earth, and tap into the field of others around the world doing the same. If you're interested, she just started it a week ago. When I first joined, there were like 5 people, and now I just see more and more dots popping up around the map, and it's super cool to see all these people who are actively entering into the state of loving coherence and sending it to the earth, which really having that awareness magnetizes that capability because it increases your belief of what we're doing. So it's a really beautiful thing that's just being birthed. So if you'd like to be a part of it, that sounds interesting to you, I'll put the link in the show notes so you can sign up for that. So yeah, these are just a few examples. What small step do you feel you can take to realign with your coherence? What can you do today? What can you do in this moment? I would love to hear your experience with this. What you found you can do to drop into coherence and how doing so has impacted your life. You can leave a comment or send me a message on Instagram. I would love to hear from you. When you listen to your body, your heart, and the earth, you will find your way back into coherence. And remember, aligning regularly with this field of inner sanctuary, wisdom, and connection to all isn't just for you. It's a gift to the world. Every breath of coherence you take helps stabilizes the global field, making it easier for others to awaken, heal, and remember their authentic selves. You are an anchor of divine light on this earth, simply by being in harmony with the magnificence and truth of who you are. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Boundless Journey. If you enjoyed it, found it useful, or gained some value out of it, I would wholeheartedly appreciate it if you would share it with a friend, or leave a 5-star review, or post it to your Instagram story and tag me at Rob the Boundless. I also kindly ask that you hit that follow button and that bell icon so you will always get notified when new episodes come out. It's a little act that makes a gigantic difference in the sea of podcasts out today. And before you go, just want you to remember that the world is calling on the activation of your soul's remembrance. You are worthy, you are capable, and you are so, so loved. Until next time, my friends. Until then, stay boundless.